Here is everything you need to know about growing blackberries. And yes, we're going to cover a lot of different things. So if you're here, you obviously want to know a lot about growing blackberries because it's more than just sticking a plant directly into the ground. And you're going to learn that after you get your first blackberry bush directly into the ground, because what you'll figure out is you'll start asking yourself a bunch of questions like, when am I going to get my first blackberry? Also, how tall will my blackberry bush go? Why is my blackberry bush leaning over? And if you decide to take it serious, you're going to wonder how in the world you can get more berries and what is the best way to plant all this stuff. And I'm going to go over a lot of this stuff with you guys because it's exactly what you need to know. Obviously, the first question that everybody asks when they go to plant their first blackberry bush is, how do I plant it? And well, the easiest way to explain it to you is don't just stick it directly into the ground. Make sure it's off to the side somewhere that is not in the middle of your yard because it'll eventually spread. And if you get more than one, you're going to want to make a nice row. And if you're wondering how far apart you should plant them in your row, I've gotten away with planting them 1 foot apart because they will eventually grow in together. Now that you got your blackberry bushes planted in a nice row, you're probably wondering, how in the world am I going to keep these things alive? And how do I make sure I water them enough to give me berries? And well, the simple answer is pretty much mulch. Whenever you plant all your blackberry bushes, you want to make sure you put mulch around the base of the plants, and you're going to want to do that often. And that mulch actually keeps the moisture directly into the ground for you. So after you get all that rain, it'll keep it in the ground for you. That way you don't have to really water them at all. That's right, I said it. You probably weren't expecting to hear that, but I rarely water these things because if you set them up correctly, you really don't have to do much at all. As a matter of fact, the only time I've ever watered these blackberry bushes behind me are the first 3 weeks that I had them in the ground. After that, they're good to go. Now that you got mulch directly at the bottom of your blackberry bushes, you're going to notice they're going to start growing really tall, and you're going to need to trellis these things. And if you're new to growing blackberries, you're going to think that a taller blackberry bush is better because it'll give you more berries, and that is completely false. You want to make sure your blackberry bushes aren't tall. That's right, the ideal height of a blackberry bush is really about up to your head in height, no matter what, because if they get all them berries on them, they can eventually lean over and snap and stop you from getting your own blackberries. The other important thing to notice is that all your blackberries come from the side of your bushes, not at the top. So actually what you'll want to do is prune the top of it so you can get lateral growth on those canes and get all of your berries that way. That's right, this blackberry bush right here needs a haircut, and I'll eventually prune it before August to get it all the way down to about head high for me. That way it can grow out in time before our first frost. The best way to explain to you the cycle of a blackberry bush is to give you one from day one. So if you bought a blackberry bush from us and we shipped it to you, all that growth from there until your first frost is actually what we call growing on your primocane. So your primocane is growing that first year. Whenever you get your first frost, consider it now a floricane. That's right, the blackberry bush then goes over to like a more woody look to it, where if it's an actual primocane on a blackberry bush, it is really, really green, flimsy, has a lot of give to it. However, whenever it's a floricane and it's been through the frost and those extreme temperature swings, well, that's when it has a lot different look to it. And don't get alarmed come wintertime because all of your leaves are actually going to fall off anyways. It's going to be a lot of sticks that you see, and you'll notice that those green stems have turned to a more woody, purplish tint to them. Then when springtime shows up, you'll see new growth coming out directly out of the ground, and that is your primocanes. That is your first year growth, and all the stuff that stuck around from the previous year is your floricane, and there is where you're going to get all your berries. So now that you know that which cane is what, you probably need to know how to prune those blackberry bushes. So on those primocanes that are all nice and green, you're going to want to make sure you cut them no higher than your head. Go ahead and cut them off because then they'll start branching out. And when it comes to when you cut your floricanes back, well, just make sure you have done it after they've given you berries, not before, because that would defeat the whole purpose of growing blackberries. And if you're confused on which cane is which, sometimes the canes will leave behind evidence of the berries that have grown on there. And you're going to want to cut this cane all the way down to the ground, not just up here. And if you decided to go down the slippery slope of all the different varieties of blackberry bushes, well, welcome to chicken math. for blackberries. That's essentially what will happen to you. See, most people will eventually try to raise chickens and notice that some just lay a brown egg, and then all of a sudden they notice that they can have every pretty color of chicken eggs. So they eventually decide to add more chickens to their chicken flock that lay a green or blue egg, and eventually it's a slippery slope. So now they've gone from having 4 chickens to 20 chickens overnight. And that's essentially what I've done. See, I've got over 120 blackberry bushes right here on my property, and I got a lot of different varieties. And it's a lot because some of them have a bigger berry than the others, some bloom at different times, and well, you need to know all this stuff. So there's actually so many varieties of blackberry bushes because it helps extend your berry season, and you're not just getting all your berries at one time. That's right, there's so many different varieties that bloom and give you berries at different times of the year. And a majority of them we actually offer. And the amazing thing about all of it is some berry shapes are different than other varieties. So you may have some blackberries that are small, while other blackberries that are very large. All of the different varieties have different pros and cons to them. And that even means some of them taste better than others. So some of them may taste a little bit more sweeter, while others may taste a little bit more tart. But the important thing is, no matter the variety, you pretty much grow them all the same way. In rows, trellis them, and you don't have to really worry about much. Now that you got a grasp on a lot of this stuff, you probably still have even more questions. And I would be willing to bet that a lot of those questions can be answered right in my ebook down below in the description of this video. Now, it's not a sales pitch. If you want to buy it, that's perfectly fine. If you don't, that's okay too. But the bottom line about everything in my ebook is that it will go over a majority of things, even all the way down to the exact week on when you can expect berries, even the weight, and how much money you can make off of each blackberry bush that you grow. So if you're interested in actually doing this for a living or trying to make some extra money on the side in the future, well, there's a lot of information in that ebook that can even tell you where to get your containers from and a lot more. One last important thing you need to remember whenever you decide to try all these different varieties of blackberry bushes is to make sure you come to us. We ship them straight to your door, and you can get them right down below in the description at saltyacresnc.com.